Alright. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode. Coach Bo with you here. We have a packed episode today. We're going to talk about managers' win-loss records, what one of the great college basketball coaches would do, even in the most stressful of situations. We're going to talk about a sad baseball practice incident involving a high school player and a baseball bat accident. We're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes and what we can learn from him and something we can use with our players so they can respond to adversity, frustration better. And then we're going to dive into the 5 mistakes in the category of communication and team dynamics that we coaches make. And this is part of the 5-part series that we're hitting on each week for 5 weeks. This is week 4. This series is titled The Most Common Coaching Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. So we will get into part 4 of that series today. Next week, part 5, the category is simplicity, safety, and recognition. Our final part of our 5-part series titled The Most Common Mistakes Coaches Make and How We Can Avoid Them. Once we finish our 5-part series next week, I have a 3 to 4 part, depending on how it gets broken up, at least 3 parts, maybe a 4-part, a 3-week to 4-week interview that I will bring out. And this interview is fantastic. It's with an author of 3 books around the subject of coaching, specifically how to build team cultures and also how to work productively and cohesively with parents when you're a coach, and also tips for parents of youth athletes. The only way you can truly lose a season is by having a bad team culture, not having fun, not getting the parents of your team on your side or working with you for the most part. If kids don't want to come back, if families don't want to come back, that's the only surefire way to lose a season, not wins and losses on the standings board. Before we dive into it, when we're done with this, or maybe right now, pause and go leave a review for this podcast, a rating, a review on your podcast app. Pretty quick to do. I think you just scroll down depending on your app. It's very helpful. It's a great way. It's a free way to give back. Takes just a few minutes and it really helps get this positive message out there. And I would really appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Let's get into it. Now, I listed 5 things we're going to discuss in today's episode, this week's episode of the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, where we're focusing primarily on the big needle movers, and definitely those big needle movers that bring us the best results, the biggest results, the fastest. And of course, we dive into some of the smaller, more detailed items when needed. So I shared with you 5 things we're going to cover in this week's episode, but I have to start off by addressing the elephant in the baseball stadium. Shohei Ohtani going to the Dodgers. Y'all know I'm a Dodger fan, but more than anything, I'm a baseball fan. I've always been a fan of great players, great managers, teams that played really well together. I've always been a big fan of coaching strategies that worked, regardless if it was the Dodgers or the Angels, those hometown teams that I grew up following more closely. Although being in LA with TBS being a superstation and WGN, most of you remember this, those superstations allowed all of us to be Chicago Cubs, sometimes White Sox, but definitely the Cubs and Braves fans, or at least watch all their games, which was pretty cool. Now, speaking of the Dodgers and Angels, I have to hit on the massive elephant in the baseball stadium right now. Shohei Ohtani signs a $700 million contract. And so I'm going to tie this in with being a better coach. Coach Bo, how are you going to tie in Shohei signing this big deal to being a better coach? Well, maybe you noticed when they announced the deal, $700 million over 10 years, $70 million a year. Wow. And he's probably not even going to pitch this year. He's had 2 Tommy John surgeries for the UCL ligament. He may not really be the pitcher that we've known him to be moving forward. It's definitely cross your fingers when it comes to his pitching in terms of his health. So the initial reaction that I saw was, wow, $700 million. What is going on? What are the Dodgers doing? Silly, stupid. They got suckered into that. The agent worked them. And I think it's important that we in life hold up and wait till we get more information. I feel like the news does this all the time now. You hear something on the news and everybody wants to be the first to break the story. It's more about being quick than right or accurate. And when we're coaching players, I think it's important, and we will talk about this with the interview coming up with JP Nurbin, who's an expert at getting the most out of our players working well with our players and with their parents, it's very important that we get more information before we overreact, before we say something or do something that we'll regret in terms of maybe a punishment or severing that rapport or that connection that we have with our players and families. So it's important, right, to have as much information as we can. Maybe not all the information, although in a perfect world that would be great, but to have more information than that initial piece that we get to make better decisions, to help our players to understand their situations. Say a kid shows up late, instead of just blowing them up, maybe dive a little bit into it. Ask them what's going on. Maybe not after the first time they're late to practice, but after the second time. Or if they're not hustling, after the second time, hey, bring them over, talk to them, and get as much information as you can. And that'll help us so much when it comes to coaching and leading our team to success. So when Shohei Ohtani's numbers, his contract was announced, there was all that stuff being said. Crazy numbers. How do they even afford that? Now the Dodgers aren't going to be able to get any more players. They're going to pay so much in luxury tax. Ohtani's agent duped them with some fake flight, etc., etc. Well, let's fast forward a few days here, and it became known fairly quickly that $680 million of that is deferred. So from what I understand at this point, $20 million of the $700 million is actually getting paid to Shohei Ohtani while he's a player. So you're getting an MVP for $2 million a year for 10 years. And then you might say, well, they're going to have to pay that money. Well, typically these contracts, and I'm not going to dive deep into these contracts, their structures. Sometimes it's fascinating to hear some of these things, but typically there's an interest rate attached to any deferred money. Like Bobby Bonilla, the famous contract, it was actually a buyout of the Mets in 2000. We're going to DFA, that we're going to designate him for assignment, basically cutting him, sending him to the minor leagues. And in his contract, Bobby Bonilla said that, hey, if you're going to do that, if you're going to cut me, Mets, you're going to owe me a $5.9 million buyout. So the Mets essentially said, hey, can we pay you $25 million bucks, somewhere in that ballpark, instead of the $5.9 million, but we're going to pay you down the road, and then we'll pay you over the course of 20, 25 years. I think the contract goes all the way to 2035. Bobby Bonilla retired in 2001, and he gets $1.1 million wired to his bank account July 1st every year. But he got an 8% interest. Shohei Ohtani's contract, from what I understand, is interest-free. So it's getting deferred interest-free, meaning the value right then and there goes way down. So if you're deferring $680 million for up to 20 years, it sounds like the last year of that contract will be 20 years from now. That $70 million quickly becomes a lot less in terms of today's dollars. Now stick with me. I think you'll like this last little bit, and then we're diving into the meat and potatoes. But I thought this was interesting, and that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm trying to give a quick take on Shohei Ohtani's situation. I tried to tie it in here with coaching. Now there's two other things to think about here. Not only is $680 million of that contract deferred at 0% interest, Shohei Ohtani is going to bring in a substantial increase in revenue for the Dodgers. I got a text message right before I hit the record button from one of my best friends who I've known since 1988, and he sends me a message. He said he got off the phone right before he sent that message. So this was today, Tuesday. I'm recording this Tuesday as it goes live. He was on the phone with an Angels Hall of Famer, and this guy said that Shohei Ohtani brought in $20 to $25 million a year in additional revenue because of all the things you could do with him. Of course, he's from Japan. They love baseball there. So they tie into a huge baseball culture that would otherwise not be interested or have very little interest. So if the Angels gained $20 to $25 million a year just by having Shohei Ohtani on their team through ticket sales, marketing, merchandise, the value of their team, their TV contract value, all those things go up. Surely the Dodgers can add to that. So let's say the Dodgers get $40 million a year added value. When you start doing the math and you reverse engineer the contract in today's dollars, so if the Angels got up to $25 million in additional revenue from having Shohei Ohtani on their team, this all goes down to net revenue, right? Net is what matters. All of you that have a business who deal with this day in and day out know what I'm talking about. So it's not just how much the contract's going out is, but how much revenue is coming in from that directly because of that deal. The Dodgers very well could get around $40 million of added value a year from having Shohei Ohtani on their team, in their market, in LA, on the West Coast. And so if you reverse engineer the contract with 0% interest, $680 million of it deferred, it's very likely when it's all said and done, as long as Shohei stays healthy and he's on the field, so fans are there, that extra fan base is there, the merchandise is being sold, his jerseys are being sold, they can increase the revenue from all the rights that they have to their team, TV, etc. it could be very likely Shohei Ohtani ends up being free for the Dodgers, or maybe even profitable, because he brings in so much extra revenue. His contract is almost all deferred at zero interest. And here's one last thing. There's a wave of Japanese players coming over. Now, there have been Japanese players coming to the major leagues for a long time. Baseball is huge in Japan. In fact, most major leaguers, if they can't cut it in the major leagues and they want to keep playing, keep making that money from playing baseball, the best bet for most of them is going to Japan. And I think there's going to be a bigger wave of players coming over than have come over in the past from Japan to play in the major leagues. And who would those players most likely want to play with? Or who would they most want to play with? I'm not saying all of them, but if you took all of them and surveyed them and asked them, hey, who do you want to play alongside of? I bet Shohei Ohtani's name would be said more than any. So youth coaches, when you have players on your team that are liked by other players, that get along with other players, you will have more players wanting to come play on your team. You'll have a wider pool of players that might want to join your team, that would likely want to join or play on your team or be excited to join your team. When you have players that aren't just good, but also players that relate to other players and connect, it's much easier to get other players to, one, join the team, and two, buy in. I think the Dodgers are going to have the best chance now of any team of getting the next wave of Japanese players coming over. By the way, Japan has figured out some things over there when it comes to coaching up baseball, pitcher development, hitting approaches, technique, the physicality of the game. Now, they've always had it figured out as much as the United States, in my opinion. But I think they're on to some good stuff over in Japan when it comes to coaching baseball players. And I expect the next wave to be pretty big. And the Dodgers have lined themselves up to get a good crack at many of those players. So I wanted to tie Shohei Ohtani signing in with coaching youth baseball. And I also had some stuff there I thought was a different take than I've seen out there. So that's my Shohei Ohtani take. I'm excited, but I also think it's important that we learn more before making a decision with our players, with our teams, with the umpires. Instead of blowing a gasket when an umpire makes a perceived bad call, go get some more information. Go out there and ask questions instead of so many coaches go yell at the umpire. Usually there's some more information that needs to be gathered before we can come to a decision of whether we think that call was incorrect or correct. So last week I talked about Jim Leyland. He got inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame, the manager of the Pirates, the Florida Marlins, some other teams. He got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he had one season he won a World Series. So last week I talked about Jim Leyland being a Hall of Fame manager, and his win-loss record was 51%. He barely won as many games as he lost. So when we go out there as coaches, check the ego. Hall of Fame coaches lose a lot of games. Make sure that your winning percentage is 100% with how many players want to come back next year and play on your team or want to continue playing baseball if they move up a level and you're not coaching them. 100% of them should want to continue playing. Now, Jim Leyland in 1997 won a world championship. He didn't even finish in first place that year. He finished in second place in 1997 with the Florida Marlins. In fact, they finished 9 games behind the Braves that year. And get this, the very next year, after winning the World Series, hoisting the trophy, Jim Leyland and the Florida Marlins lost 108 games. Now, Jim Leyland's always been one of my favorite managers, but his overall record equates to a Little League coach having a 15-14 record, a 13-12 record. He won the World Series one time in, I want to say it was around 25 years of being a manager. He won the championship one time. The very next year, he lost 108 games. Did the math really quick on this. There have been 4,000 team seasons. There's been 147 seasons of Major League Baseball. That's about 4,000 team seasons, give or take, because there used to be fewer teams in the league. It's about 4,000 team seasons, total team seasons. Only 27 ever lost more games than his team did in 1998. So he lost more games than 3,973 other teams did in the history of baseball in 1998, the year after he won the World Series. The reason I'm sharing this with you is coaches, go out there and you're going to lose some games. Don't go out there planning to lose, but set your expectations realistically. Focus on the priorities and the more important things. And whatever you do, do not hang your hat on your win-loss percentage that's determined by the scoreboard. Now, if you're here at 80/20 Baseball, you will win more games because you show up here, you listen every week, and you take what we're talking about out there. You will win more games than you otherwise would have. And in some cases, a lot more. But I think it's important that we go out there with the right expectations that can prepare us to perceive our season as much more successful. Okay, moving to the next part. Dean Smith, the great North Carolina basketball coach would remain calm in the most tense situations during super close games against rivals. And even when his team was playing terribly, Dean Smith was too busy trying to find solutions and to get his team to play better that he didn't have time to get upset at the things that had already happened. He was present, trying to plan for a better future, not being stuck or angry or ticked off or upset at something that had happened previously in the game or a few minutes ago or 30 seconds ago. He was too busy trying to find solutions to get better moving forward. Be present. Don't get stuck on bad calls, mistakes, bad plays. And that little clip about Dean Smith came from the Culture System book, and the author is going to be on this podcast in a couple weeks, and that stood out to me. You want to be a great coach? Well, great coaches, the truly great coaches, remain calm even in the most tense situations, and role model that for our players. Stay calm and focus your mindset on solutions. Focus your thoughts on solutions, and that helps us from getting snagged on past mistakes, errors, bad calls, etc. All right, bat safety, baseball bat safety. There was a sad story that came out about a week ago in Florida. A high school player was critically injured in a batting cage accident. And it says here that he was accidentally hit in the head by a baseball bat. On this podcast, I have talked about the non-negotiables that I would have with my players. Players are not allowed to swing their baseball bats unless given direct permission and are in designated swing areas. It's very important that you clarify those two things. They must have permission to swing their bat, and they must be in a designated swing area, such as the batter's box, the on-deck circle, a tee drill or a hitting drill that's off to the side or in an area that does not have through traffic. And the third thing I would recommend, anytime their teammate or a coach has a baseball bat around them, they must leave a buffer, a bubble, a 5-foot buffer between them and the person with the baseball bat. The biggest thing for youth baseball, since there's not as much time in the batting cages, is players are not allowed to swing their bats unless they've gotten the direct okay. So there's no practice swings going on randomly in different parts of the field. They're not showing off their new bat before practice, randomly swinging it over by the dugout. The second thing is, I highly recommend you cone off with little dome cones that are super cheap and take up hardly any space in a bag. Set up dome cones, a certain color, and say these are designated swing areas. You could put an extended circle of cones around the on-deck circle, around home plate, in the batting cages, and make sure players understand they're not to swing unless they have permission. And you can say, hey, you are not swinging during this drill until you step up to that tee and it's time to hit the ball. You're not over here, you're not backing up and taking practice swings, you're not backing out and taking practice swings. And then strike a little fear into the rest of your players by saying, hey, you like your teeth? Well, those teeth will pop out real quick if a baseball bat hits them. In fact, my first year of playing baseball, one of my teammates, Darren, was walking in front of me, and another one of my teammates, Mike, swung his baseball bat and knocked out 2 of his teeth right in front of me, fell on the grass. My first year of playing baseball back in 1987. I've seen a handful of kids get hit by errant throws, errant swings, practice swings. These didn't need to happen. These weren't part of the game. These weren't part of the drill. These could have been completely avoided. One of my teammates in high school got hit by a baseball. I believe he lost 2 or 3 teeth right there on the field, and the braces were holding in 4 or 5 more from falling out. I would be very strict with this. If you're in the batting cages, if they're inside the net, make sure that players are not standing next to the net. They have to know that net and show them, pull the net of the batting cage and say, hey, look how much it moves. Look how far a baseball or a bat could move this net. So if you're not 3 or 4 feet away from the net, you could still get hit because this net may not be stiff. It may be loose and have a lot of give. So a very sad situation of a player who is, from this article I'm reading, he's declared brain dead by his doctor. So super sad. I don't know the specifics on it. It is important for us to talk about bat safety overall. And I think a big one, what I'm sharing here isn't related to this incident necessarily, like how this could have been avoided. What I'm talking about is just overall bat safety. You could say, players, you will not take your baseball bat out of your bag when you get to the field until I've given it the okay, which is essentially once they need it. And then we let them know there are no practice swings at any time. And 3, they should be swinging in designated swing areas, i.e. the batter's box, the on-deck circle, a designated hitting drill when they're up to bat, in the batting cage or standing next to a tee. So I wanted to hit on that. It was a sad story. And getting hit by a baseball or baseball bat, those are the two major safety issues. And some forethought, some clarity, and some sternness with those rules and expectations can go a long way to minimizing the chance of this happening. Again, we can't take out all risk in life. That's not the goal, but we're trying to reduce and almost eliminate any unnecessary risk. As a coach, our goal is to eliminate all the unnecessary risk, not eliminate risk. Of course, that's not possible. All right, Patrick Mahomes. This household loves Patrick Mahomes. We love watching him play. We're big Patrick Mahomes fans. He got a little upset after Sunday's loss to the Buffalo Bills. So this is a couple days ago from when this podcast was recorded and published. He was irate after a late game penalty. The article says Mahomes had an absolute meltdown on the sideline and at one point having to be restrained by his teammates as he screamed at the referees. After the final whistle blew, Mahomes was still fuming as he congratulated Josh Allen and other Bills players. However, after sleeping on things, Mahomes had a change of heart about the way he acted. So he was on a radio show on Monday and he said this, and this is something we could share with our players. You go, I'm Coach Bo, why are you talking about Patrick Mahomes? One, he's a real fun athlete to watch, but even if you don't watch football, even if you don't care about the Chiefs or Mahomes and you haven't watched a football game in 5 years, you have players on your team that likely know of Patrick Mahomes. They see him on TV. They see him on the commercials. He might be somebody some of your players look up to. And this would be a great example of how we could teach our players or show our players an example and highlight one of the star players, one of the players they know very well, correcting his mistake because, hey, they don't just copy their swing and their pitching delivery and how they throw a football or how they play shortstop. They might likely copy those other things too, like their mannerisms, their behavior. So Patrick Mahomes said, quote, obviously you don't ever want to react that way. I care. I love the game. I love my teammates. I want to go out there and put everything on the line. But obviously you can't do that. I can't be that way towards officials or really anybody in life. So I probably regret acting like that. But more than anything, I regret how I acted towards Josh after the game because he had nothing to do with it. For these examples, some of your players might have been watching this, or you could share, hey, Patrick Mahomes, he messed up. He had a meltdown. Even if they didn't see the game, you could say, hey, I don't know if you guys saw this. He had a meltdown on the sideline. He got really upset. But here's his reaction the next day. This is what he recommends. He says, obviously, you don't ever want to react that way. And then he said this, you can't be like that. You can't be like that towards officials or anybody in life. So when they hear this, your players hear that Patrick Mahomes, this famous player they might look up to, responds to a mistake they made playing a game this way, that gives them a blueprint. That shows them a path towards responding better when things don't go their way. All right, the next part of this podcast, communication and team dynamics. That's the overarching theme of these 5 mistakes that us coaches most commonly make. Number 1, yell at umpires. Speaking of Mahomes, number 1 mistake, yelling at umpires. Coaches oftentimes yell at umpires for perceived bad calls. This sets a bad example, a really bad example for our players. It gets our focus away from what we should be focusing on. That's getting our team better, moving forward. The discussion with umpires should be calm, respectful, and more of a back and forth, asking questions, getting more information like I discussed earlier in this episode. Number 2, the second most common mistake coaches make in this area, not connecting with parents. Regular communication and building relationships with parents is key. It keeps everyone on the same page. Regular communication, clarity on reasoning. We're not overselling it. We're not begging, but regular communication of expectation standards, clarity on the why behind those, and consistency, and it helps keep everyone on the same page. Number 3, not setting expectations. Coaches, we need to clarify the team rules, the practice and game policies, behavioral expectations. I wouldn't dive in so deep on one. I would just routinely clarify them concisely, but routinely bring those up, especially early on in the season. This avoids confusion and problems, and it eliminates giving players and parents that perceived outlet of an excuse. Number 4, not addressing bullying or bad behavior. Coaches must not tolerate bullying at any time. Rough play, that's up to you. I don't think we should coddle our kids too much. A little rough play if they want to wrestle a little bit after practice. But if they're intentionally trying to hurt, so they have bad attitudes, or they're bullying, and sometimes this is hard to see. It's low key. This can't be tolerated. And this needs to be addressed promptly. And this is one of the key times that I would actually put a player on blast in front of their teammates. I wouldn't overdo it, but I would definitely put them on blast. When I see bullying happen, that's a time to immediately stop what you're doing, to immediately stop the team, be firm, and you don't need to be low key on this one. I wouldn't go over the top. I wouldn't make it personal, but I definitely would be firm, a little loud, really send a message. Stop bullying in its tracks. A rough play or kids teasing, there's a fine line there. I think the key there to figure out what's bullying or teasing and what's just healthy bantering amongst kids and especially boys is the relationship those two players have. If they got a good relationship, you've seen that before, they're good friends, watch the reaction, how they move away from it. Is it just water off their back? It's part of their friendship. All right, that one you might say, okay, look, I'll always keep an eye on it, but nothing to address here. So it's not one size fits all. It's not one or the other. It's not black and white. But bullying, clear bullying, intentionally hurting somebody, bad attitudes, those need to be addressed firmly and promptly. Number 5, letting parents coach. Parents often try to shout instructions to their kids, but this can undermine the coach. Coaches should be clear on the boundaries there, and I would open up a path for them to communicate with you. I definitely think that parents should have a say in how their player is coached, but it should come through you and work together on a plan. And that can be after practice. That could be via text message, during a set hours, say 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Could be over the phone, email. I think parents should be involved in the coaching of their kid when they're younger, if they want to be. Some just don't care and they don't want to be, or they don't know enough at all to even have an opinion on anything. But I would not cut that off. I would just reroute it. I would set the expectation that it gets rerouted through you. You work together, and then the message comes from the coach during practice and during game time. So yelling at umps, connecting with parents, letting parents coach, setting clear expectations early and often, and not addressing bullying or bad behavior promptly and firmly. All right, those are 5 key mistakes, common mistakes us coaches make, and I shared out tips there on how to avoid them and how to take a better path. Next week, Part 5 will wrap up our 5-part series titled The Most Common Mistakes Coaches Make and How to Avoid Them. Next week will be safety, player and team recognition, and simplicity. That's the overarching topic. As soon as we wrap up here, please leave a review, a rating for the podcast. If you're getting something out of it and you're enjoying it, just take the few minutes. That would be a great way to give back to support this podcast, and I would greatly appreciate that. So thank you for that in advance. And until next week, you know what I'll say here. Let's take care of our health, our families, our close friends, and let's take care of the youth baseball community. You've already taken care of the first part by getting involved. Now let's take this information from this podcast, from the previous podcast, from the website 8020baseball.com. Let's take it out there and put it into play. Let's not go down looking. All right. Love being here with all of you each week. This has been Coach Bo, and until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.